Hello, and welcome to Creative Dynamos. This episode. I'll be talking with Mike and Dory from the Othering podcast. We got to know each other through threads, and yeah, how are you guys doing? Thanks for coming on.
Pretty good. Thank you for
Well,
having us.
yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So before we get started, this may answer some of the questions I have, but tell me a little bit about how you got to the point where you decided that you wanted to do a podcast.
Sure, that's a fun story.
Okay,
I'll
take it
start.
away.
20 years ago, we used to do an internet radio. We used to own an internet radio station. We had different live shows that were on there, and we loved doing it. But there was a lot of drama, a lot of crap behind the scenes that wasn't much fun, and we ended up shutting it down. We didn't do anything for a long time. And then more recently, probably end of 2024 into 2025, Dory's disability was starting to get worse, and she wanted to find people more like her, not feel so alone. So she went to Instagram, social media, and looked for her community and started finding different people and talking to different people through that. And then from there, she wanted to help people. She thought in the medical field, but she started that and it didn't work. You can talk to that if you want, Dory.
Yeah.
And then in the car one day we were talking and she said, why don't we start a podcast and we can advocate for them and let them come on and share their story and humanize them, and was really talking it up, and she even had the title already in her mind. And I said, ask some of your friends that you've met on social media, see if they'll do it. And we got a good response, and so we did it.
Awesome. Dory, did you want to talk about your kind of drove you to connect with people prior to the podcast and kind of what was your journey
Sure.
in that regard?
For the longest time since I can remember, I always wanted to be a doctor and a lawyer. And my thought process was, with having a law degree, I would know how to pick a good lawyer to help me if I ever got in trouble with malpractice lawsuits. And I wanted to be a medical doctor because I love biology. I love helping human body feel better. And it always came down to the fact that a lot of times doctors don't listen. And I wanted to be the doctor that listened and actually helped people. And I talked myself out of doing it when I was in high school, and life happened. And then I was thinking possibly going back to become some sort of like nurse, maybe. And Mike was like, your disability's getting in the way. Is that even possible? And that's when I started looking up different nurses that were either quadriplegics or paraplegics or just using a wheelchair. And that's how I started finding people.
That made me sound kind of ableist. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm not, I swear.
Um, and I did start studying, but it got to a point of where like my depression and my anxiety was going through the roof. That it wasn't helping me. And so I went back and started thinking about the fact that after the election, usually the first people to be removed would be LGBTQ and disabled. And myself being a part of both of those groups, I'm like thinking, why don't we humanize them? Because it's harder to kill somebody when you know their name, know their story, know their face. And so, unless you're a psychopath, of course. But, so I started that's what started my journey, and thinking there's got to be a way to help people. And that's when I started thinking maybe we could do a podcast, because I had never heard of a podcast that talked to both. It's usually either LGBTQ or it's disabled. And I thought, but we intersect. There's a lot of intersectionality, and a lot of people don't always talk about that. And so I figured that's where we'll come in, and we'll talk to both, whether they are both or either or. And that's how I started.
Nice. So I've heard some of this in what you've been saying, But what's your goal with the podcast? When I talk to people who are starting a podcast, my first question is, what's your niche going to be? Because we're just going to talk into the mic and see what happens. Almost never works.
Right.
And the other is, what is your goal? What do you want to accomplish ultimately? And sometimes people say, "Oh, I want to make money," and I'm like, "No, this is not a reason to do a podcast." What's your goal as a podcasting team ultimately with the podcast?
We actually tried a podcast before this one where it was just to talk about anything. I think we recorded about 5 episodes and then
Not
gave
even.
up on it. It
Mm-hmm.
was not worth it.
Yeah.
But my goal is just to make a difference,
Hmm.
just to help people out there in this horrible political climate we're in and make a difference.
And yeah, that's pretty much my goal is I want to get their stories out. I want to make people realize that, yeah, disability happens and that's okay. You don't need to be ashamed of it. You can be proud of it. You can be happy with it, or you can dislike having a disabling injury or something. And that's okay
Mm-hmm.
too. It doesn't matter. You're still a human. And on the LGBTQ side, I also want to bring in an awareness that they not only do they exist. Of course, everybody knows they exist, but a lot of people say, I've never met somebody in that. And I wanted to change that. Now you have. Now you've met people. Now you've heard stories from these people. And I guess bringing, not in the kumbaya kind of way, but bring people together.
Absolutely.
And on that same note, it wasn't really my initial goal, but now it's just meeting that community, meeting those new friends, and
Creating a family.
creating a family, building that community. It's wonderful.
You've brought up the political climate a couple of times, and yeah, obviously things are horrible. We hope things will change, but there's still going to be a need, I think, for your podcast and for bringing this community of people together. Because even in the best of times, these are still conversations worth having.
Right.
So, Dory, you and Mike have both kind of mentioned your disabilities. Would you want to share with us what you struggle with in terms of your disabilities?
Okay, so I have depression, anxiety, and I have CRPS, which is a chronic pain syndrome. It is known as RSD and various other acronyms out there that it is known as, but it's a complex disease where you have chronic pain in joints or body parts that an injury that wouldn't normally cause continual pain causes continual pain. In my case, I had sprained my ankle and it's healed, but it doesn't feel like it's healed. And so it's always throbbing and swelling and just pain all the time.
I know that one of the other things that I think you do with this podcast is build awareness of things like that, because I've never heard of that before today. And I think that's important. Like on this podcast, I think on this podcast, I've talked to people who have had some disabilities, although that's not the focus. I want to normalize talking about these things. And I have my youngest's boyfriend has Ehlers-Danlos, and I'd never heard of that before. And lo and behold, I interviewed an author on here a few episodes ago, and they have Ehlers-Danlos. What are the odds that I'd get 2 people with that fairly rare, as I understand it, chronic condition?
Yeah.
But it's important now. People know, thanks to this podcast, now people know what that is, at least a little bit more than they might have before. What have been some of the most unique guests that you've had on your podcast in terms of perhaps their conditions or what they brought as a guest? Some memorable guests.
We've definitely learned a lot, especially me. I would say I wasn't really in that community until we started. Probably the rarest, I don't mean to sound like the Disability Olympics here, but one of the more rare conditions we talked to was Nellie, which was I
want to say it was like BMP2.
BMP, and it's a horrible condition.
Yeah.
And But
Totally.
like you were talking about Ehlers-Danlos, the only time I had really heard of that before was in the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum.
Yeah.
And that takes it to the extreme and makes fun of it almost. It's not like that. And I've learned so much. We've talked to quite a few people with that condition. And then, like yourself, gastroparesis. I had heard of it, but I didn't know the severity of it. I didn't know how awful it can be. So I've learned a lot for sure.
So Mike, as a spouse of somebody who, I'm assuming, of somebody with disabilities, I think you bring an important perspective to it. What are some things that you've had to deal with or come to terms with as you've progressed through interviewing your guests?
As far as being a caretaker, it was definitely very challenging, especially in the beginning as things were getting increasingly worse for her because it's invisible pretty much. I can see she's in pain, but her foot, her ankle, everything looks fine. So it's hard to really wrap my head around what exactly she's feeling and understand that. So a lot of household duties and things shifted and changed around. And it was a big shift for sure. Since we started the podcast, I would say that has helped a lot. Talking to different people, seeing and understanding what's really going on and learning what I've learned has made a big difference. And now I think Dory and I have figured it all out as much as we can.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot more to go. I think we've gotten to a good point at this time.
How many episodes have you guys had?
Good question. We are
A little over 50.
We are at episode 54.
Awesome. How do you go about finding guests now that you've established your presence and you've had over 50 podcasts, episodes? What's your outreach to find guests like, or are people coming to you now that you've established yourself?
Pretty much people are coming to us, and it's a weird feeling. It's nice in a weird feeling because people are just, I got recommended by my friend and I love your podcast and I want to be a part of it. And we get, which is nice, actually, very nice to hear. And we get people saying, I want to be on your podcast because it makes me laugh and it makes me learn stuff. And it feels not, but it definitely feels good. Yeah. And so we haven't had a chance to really put out another like search for guests.
I think we did twice.
Yeah, I think total times we've done it twice. And people just keep coming and it's awesome.
And then there are some of the dream guests that we wanted that we actually reached out to them to see if they would come. Some said yes, some crickets, some said no. But yeah, so it's a little bit of everything. But it was funny because we put out a post on Threads saying Saturday's interview canceled, anyone interested? And after we got that, I would say we booked out about 3 months worth of interviews just from that one post. And it just completely filled up and haven't need to look since because more people come to us, like Dory was talking, or we get the dream guests that we're talking about, and it's just been smooth flowing.
Yeah, I know every time I put out a call for guests, I've done it a few times. It's like I have to turn on the spigot and then I have to turn it off like really quickly. It's a good problem to have, though.
Exactly.
So what's your approach towards interviewing your guests? Do you have questions that you kind of prep beforehand? Do you let it flow, how it's going to flow? I know how it was with me because I was a guest on your podcast, but what's your approach to interviewing people?
I'd like to have everybody write out a little paragraph, a couple of sentences, however long they want it, that explains who they are and if they're LGBTQ or disabled, or they're like an avid, what's the word?
Advocate.
And that allows us to figure out what they're willing to talk about, how deep they're willing to talk about it, and gives us a feel for who they are. And then we just wing it. I know it sounds crazy to do it, but I don't like that type of structure where I can't come up with questions like that. I like making it feel like it's just friends meeting at a coffee shop and we're just talking about life and we're talking about different aspects, because although these people have disability or LGBTQ, I don't want them to feel like they're in an interrogation room and or like some Dr. Phil or Oprah crap. And yes, I said they are crap. But I want them to feel comfortable, because I feel like you get more out of people when they're comfortable. And then as we talk to them, I'll come up with questions, or Mike comes up with questions that just kind of either spring from what they gave us or just as we're listening to them.
And as you, as a podcaster, probably know, and probably some of your listeners, you don't start recording the moment you get on the call and say hello. So in that first 2 or 3 minutes where you're getting everything ready, we like to have a nice little conversation, try to just get them loosened up a little bit so they're not so nervous, maybe make them laugh, something like that. And that seems to make
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a skill, making your guest comfortable, making sure it's conversational, because I don't think anybody wants to listen to a rapid fire line of questions. That's not interesting. I think you guys do well at keeping that tone light but informative and conversational. Yeah, you guys do a great job.
I have to give
as an aside, apropos of nothing, you guys both have great voices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
And
how we
should
met.
consider
We had great voices.
should consider like voice acting if you haven't looked into that.
I'd love to.
I actually signed up for one of those big sites where you can submit your auditions and everything. And I submitted a few, but I backed off for now. I'm going to start over again. But yeah, I've looked at it.
Yeah, I've been told that I have the voice of a sex call operator. So
How did you take that?
I was actually flattered, but at the same time, wow, okay, but thank you.
So it's a long story, but we basically met online. And so our initial interactions were either in a chat room, like a instant messenger, or on the phone. And her voice was just wonderful. It was
Nice.
great listening to her.
Nice. How long have you guys been together?
26 years this May.
Yep.
Awesome. My wife and I just had our 30th anniversary. And
Great.
it's considering our familial history, that is a record setting number, unfortunately. But so, Dory, you have some disabilities. Mike, you are a supportive caretaker. You probably have I'm assuming you have a day job aside from podcasting.
Yeah.
What we do takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of time. I had to cancel our previous interview because I had a flare up and just felt miserable. How do you deal with job, disability issues, life stuff, and keep this podcast thing going? I think a lot of people would be interested to know that. And what are some of the challenges you've faced along the way?
I'll start by saying we're lucky we have two of us. It's not just one person like you doing all of it. So we do have the two of us. We each have our own our duty, so to speak, in what we do. Take it away, Dory.
I think what keeps us going is the fact that we're both neurodivergent, which is something we discovered through being on our podcast and our therapists. And it gives us an energy. And like we were talking about before, wanting to expand our family and our friendships and things like that. And it's just, it kind of makes me alive, makes me feel like I'm doing something and I'm helping somebody. And that just keeps me going. We have our moments where I'll have my flare-ups, but usually my flare-ups happen in the early part of the day. And because of him working, we don't usually do anything until after 5. So that's kind of our benefit right there. And everybody pretty much talks to him, which is amazing
To
because
get set up.
he doesn't usually talk on our thing. So
That's her big job is she talks on the podcast.
Yeah.
I do the rest.
Nice.
So I think sometimes we've confused people as to who they're talking to because, like I said, he's always the one that they talk to in order to book or get the blurb from them, everything. And then the day of, I'm usually the one that's talking. And, but he's gotten better about talking along with me when I let him get in.
So if you work, turn off the podcast now, but I'll have to be honest. I do a lot of stuff while I'm at work, my 9 to 5 job on my phone, like answering social media. If I get a DM or something, or answering emails, I do a lot of that, and that helps. I think that would be a big challenge if I did not do that and didn't have access to that. So that's a big help for sure.
And
Same.
yes,
And we have a kid that helps us with the YouTube side of everything.
yes.
He creates,
Okay.
he puts it all up there, so I don't do any of that, which is nice.
So it's a family affair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to recruit our other two, but so far, not yet.
So you guys have 3 kids.
Yes.
Yep.
Nice. Me too. So how old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
There'll be 19, 20, and 24 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're really close. Mine are 21, 23, and 25.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Boom, boom. So I know what it's like. Are any of your kids still living with you?
Yeah.
2 of them. Yep.
2 of them are.
So on top of all of this, you've got parenting as well in the mix. Do you really schedule and really keep things tight, or is it a little more free flowing in terms of like when you record and things of that nature, and when you post and things like that?
We have 3 different calendars of all of our podcast guests. We have one on the wall, we have one in a notebook, we have one on the computer. We have them everywhere. So that's very organized. And then after I edit, I can upload it to the website. Podbean is what we use. And I can just schedule it there for it to post when it's ready. So I have another 50 episodes already scheduled, ready to go out over the next several months. So that saves a lot of time right there for sure. As far as family is concerned, I'm not sure I would say we're very scheduled.
No.
They're pretty self-sufficient. They
Yeah.
both have jobs. So one's gone all day during the day and the other one's gone most of the evenings because he works the evenings. So it works out. It would be a lot harder if they were still toddlers for sure.
But we're terrible with like planning and all. If we are really bad at planning, and because of having it on his computer and both of our cell phones and 2 wall calendars and my notebook, that's what keeps us going. But otherwise, we're awful, and we just go with the flow type of people. We're extremely laid back, and so our kids, we got lucky to have really great kids, and they love to go with the flow too. And I think the biggest issue we have with recording is our pets,
Yep.
because our dogs usually sleep throughout, and then it's like there's always that one moment where you're getting something really good and bark bark.
It's actually funny. I think we've trained our dogs when we get on the microphones and start talking, they get real quiet, they sleep. And as soon as we say something to the effect of we have to wrap it up, they start getting up and start getting a little more rowdy. Like they know we're getting off. They can get attention now.
I am fortunate enough that I have a room. So our house is a split level, and I have a room in our basement level, which is away from our pets and away from the family, so that people can do whatever they want to do, and there's no fear of background noise. I'm very fortunate in that regard, because I know that's a challenge. Like when I was recording, not in this space, I had to make sure that the dogs were put up and that everybody knew not to come into the room and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's hard.
Yep.
It is.
And right behind us, you can see the door above Dory's head. That's the kitchen. So we have to tell the kids, don't come down to eat for this hour when we have the recording. And that's something that's taken some time for them to get used to.
Sure. We have one living at home currently, and they have a significant other, and they have their own kind of, it's like a mother-in-law suite. So they've got a little kitchenette, and they've got a fairly large kind of living/bedroom area. So yeah, I can imagine. But I can imagine having to deal with that. I've been a podcaster off and on for 17 years, mostly off. And I remember trying to record in my living room while I had toddlers, and it just I had to do it at 10 o'clock at night because that was the only time where everything would be quiet and nobody would be awake except for my wife. So, and she would be like there listening, which made it weird because I was recording my audiobooks and stuff, and it just felt strange having an audience. So I love having a studio, although it's hardly worth calling it that.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it may sound.
No, we did the same thing. We had to do it late at night when we owned the radio station because our kids were toddlers then, and we had to wait until they were put in bed and going to sleep, and then we would do our show, and it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yes. I love being in the stage of life that we're in now because it allows a lot more freedom for creative outlets. But our kids, I think our kids, your kids, my kids, I think they benefit from having parents that have this creative outlet.
Yeah.
And how does, and you've touched on this a little bit, how does having that creative outlet affect your mental health? I'm curious.
The podcast has been wonderful for both of our mental health. You talk to that, Dory, because I think it's more affected you more than me.
Yeah, I was, for a while, my depression got so bad that I felt like I was hitting rock bottom type of thing. And when we started the podcast and we started talking to these people, I felt like let me backtrack a little. I felt like I was alone in my pain, in being frustrated that my disease was getting worse, making it so that it was harder for me to walk. I couldn't cook. I couldn't really help clean for a myriad of reasons. And it was frustrating. And talking to these people, all of these people, have allowed me to share a bit of myself in each conversation that we have. And it's healed me in ways that I don't think any type of therapy could. And it's not to say that my therapist is bad. She's awesome too. But it was a mixture of both, having my therapist and these people and them saying that they've done certain things. And I'm like, I've been through that too. I've done that too. It's not just me. And it's helped heal my inner child as well, because talking to neurodivergent people, it's like, I relate to that 100%. I completely understand what they're talking about. And for the longest time, though, before this, I thought it was just me. And it's just, I said it before, and I'll happily say it again, that I feel like this podcast saved me.
In turn, you know what they say, happy wife, happy life. So it saved me too. But even aside from that, I mean, for me, I think it really, like I said earlier, really helped me understand what Dory's going through and her pain and her disability. So I think it helped me come to terms better with it so I could accept it better, which in turn makes me happier because I'm not so pissed off at her all the time for not doing something. And then she's not always pissed off because she's found her happy place now, so she's pleasant to be around. So it all came full circle.
Yes.
That's great. For me, I struggle with anxiety, depression, in addition to my physical issues. One of the drawbacks to this, and I don't know if this is something you face, but one of the drawbacks to this is the pressure. Feeling, okay, I've got to get these interviews out. I've got to interview these people. They're trusting in me to be there when I say I'm going to be there. And there have been many times over the past, I guess this has been going on for 5 or 6 months now, which is hard to believe, where I've been like, I should just quit now while I disappoint the fewest number of people if possible. Does any of this sound familiar to you guys?
Yeah. There have been times when I didn't feel up to talking. There have been and wanted to kind of, oh, I don't want to do this right now. I'm not feeling 100%. But for me, once I start talking to them, it flips on a switch. Not that I'm faking it or anything. It just energizes me and it makes me happy to talk to them, because sometimes I think when I get in those doldrums of I don't feel like talking, that kind of brings me back to life, so to speak, because I'm one of those extrovert introvert people, and I need both to feel like I'm a human.
She talks a lot on the podcast, but hardly, not at all, off the podcast to me, of course.
Hush.
The term for that is ambivert.
Yes.
And I am one of those too. One of the reasons why I named this podcast Creative Dynamos is because, like you, talking with people, like once I get behind the microphone and I see my guests, and which I love doing, I love doing video now, because seeing your faces, seeing the faces of my guests energizes me. There's been more than once, not today, thankfully, but there's been several times where I've 15 minutes before time, I'm like, Jesus, I can't do this.
Yep.
Yeah, but I know that as soon as I sit down in the chair and fire up all the applications and get the mic hot and everything, it's go time. And I love it. Like you said, you're not faking it. There's interacting with creative people, interacting with people who you vibe with because of a shared experience or a shared struggle, whatever it may be, is really energizing for me. So you're not alone in that regard.
And I would say there are specific guests, and I'm not saying this that they're favorites, but some that kind of make us more nervous than others. They're bigger, they're more famous, whatever the case may be, but there's definitely some that make us a little more nervous than others. But
Sure.
you had mentioned the pressure, and I think we've accumulated so many recordings beforehand that we alleviated that pressure from the get-go, because we had, if the next 10 guests were to cancel, we're still good to go. Won't have any disruptions. So that feels real good to have that safety net.
Yeah.
So I have 4 episodes I still need to edit, and I can take my time. I've got months before they need to be done. And that's nice to have that ability.
Yeah, we've got pretty much 2 years worth of interviews by accident already. So.
On the flip side of that, the problem could be, you could say, is we overbooked ourselves with doing the interviews, because we're doing 3 a week, which is a lot. But we enjoy it. We like it. It's not work to us. So
No,
we love doing it.
And
I definitely have I definitely have my 3 a week interviews, and it is a lot. But at the same time, like you said, if you let it become a buffer, that's a big help. I tend to be a little more impulsive in my posting. It's hard for me to hold on to an interview. I want it to go live as soon as it's done. But I think that I do myself no favors by running out of, playing it that close to the wire.
We initially were releasing 1 a week, and then we went to 1 a week and another one every other week. So 2 every other week. And now we're going to 2 every week, because I have the same problem. I get really anxious seeing so many scheduled to come out and not actually released, and I want them out now. So I'm the same way. He's not. She's much more patient.
Yep, because I like having that buffer of, if I'm not feeling good, because there's going to be a time where I'm going to lose my voice. I usually get sick at least once a year because of asthma. I completely lose my voice, and having that buffer of not having to worry about if we miss 1 or 2 or have to reschedule some, that it's going to mess up because now we've got nothing for next week. And it's nice that way. I'd say the biggest part is just when I do my rants, because sometimes it's hard to not want to just be quiet that week, but at the same time, it's really cathartic doing those rants and just kind of having a anger moment and just be like, this pisses me off. Let's talk about it.
So do you do these rants as an extra episode kind of thing?
It's just me and Mike's recording it, and I will talk about something that I've noticed usually within the LGBTQ community or the disabled community, silly infighting, things like that. And I like to kind of get it off my chest that there's bigger fish to fry than each other. We can worry about each other later. Let's try to survive right now. And I apparently a lot of people like them too, because we get requests and you didn't post this yet. And so that I'd say that one is more of a stressor than our actual podcast.
And that came about because during the podcast episodes, she would get on a roll and start talking about something, get angry about it, and start going on and on. And sometimes she has some pretty out there metaphors and things that are funny. But at the same time, she's mad about whatever it is. And people always loved hearing that. So the idea was to do the rants to get that same feel. But not quite the same because they're not in mid conversation, but it works and they're good.
And I hear you. That's really cathartic for you. And it's nice to have that outlet. And I'm sure that you find, like you said, that a lot of your listeners are on the same page. It's a good way to connect with them, I think.
Yeah, a lot of them thank us for speaking out, for saying something.
Sometimes there can be moments where you're not sure if what you're thinking is right or if, what you want to say is going to come across right. And everybody has that feeling too, but sometimes things just need to be said. And sometimes I have always been able to open my mouth and fuss at people ever since I can remember. I fussed at a priest when I was 5 years old, so
Nice.
I figure I can do that, be that person to kind of push it out there and kind of let people know, yeah, this is how it should be. This is how we can get better. And the fussing at the priest was because he was leaning over to give me a hug goodbye, and his cross hit me in the face. And so, and being the kid I was, I told him, I fussed at him saying, you're not supposed to let that happen because I'm a child and you're an adult and you can get in trouble for that. And he gave me his cross.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, how has it been building an audience for you guys? What have you guys done to get the word out about your podcast?
It's challenging. A lot of it's social media, for sure. And then a lot of it's counting on the guests to share it, to let their friends know. So you tell your friends, they'll tell their friends, et cetera, et cetera. Recently, we actually started putting out press releases to media, seeing if anyone kind of picks up. I wrote like a page article, so to speak, seeing what happens there. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but trying something different.
Absolutely. I don't know how it is with you guys. I have the fortunate situation of interviewing people who have a vested interest in their interview going as wide as possible, and they already have established social media and things like that. You guys are not necessarily looking for guests that already have that in their back pocket. So I know it must be a challenge. A lot of the, I guess, weight of getting the word out is on y'all's shoulders more so than it might be otherwise.
And I like it that way because I want big names, but I also want little names, so to speak.
Regular Joe Schmoes.
Yeah, because
Yes.
everybody gets to hear the big named people because they get interviewed by Oprah or whoever is around. And I want the people that don't have a huge following behind them to feel like they have the same chance as somebody who's quote unquote big. And that was part of our goal, was to make sure that nobody feels like they're the little people versus big name marquee grabbers type of thing. Yeah. Because we want your voices to be told for everybody, not just certain people. And it's difficult to get it drummed up, but I think we've been doing really well so far, and it
And,
keeps growing.
and over time, it just organically happens. And I guess once they follow your channel or whatever on Spotify or something, it automatically downloads it. So we have a certain number of downloads almost immediately every Monday and Thursday, which is nice.
Hmm.
So you organically grow it. And I don't think we've had any guests from Oprah, but one of our guests had been on Ellen DeGeneres show, which was one of the big ones like you were talking about, where it was easy for me as far as promoting it. But then we've talked to
Hmm.
others that are nothing, they're just college students. They're not big, they're not looking for fame, they're not trying to promote anything, but they're just as important and promote that all the same.
Absolutely. I know in my case, I'm looking for guests who need their voices to be heard.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, if I get somebody who's a best-selling author, great. That's not the focus of this, and never, I hope never will be, because
Right.
I've been and am currently that little guy that I want the voices of the other people who are out there who, yes, they have something to promote, but they don't have the platform that I will hopefully have and continue to build. Yeah.
And we want to push for big and better all the time, and we always want our audience to grow, but not
Hmm.
because we want money and not because we want
Hmm.
the fame or anything. We just want the word to get out there. We want people to hear it, and we want people to be able to hear other stories.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, it's been great talking with you. Tell everybody where they can find you and subscribe to your podcast.
Take it away, Mike.
All right. Podcast is available pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. So Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, iHeart, all the podcast networks. You can find us on social media, mostly Facebook and Instagram is where we're the most active under Othering Podcast. We don't have TikTok. We removed that political
Yeah.
reasons. And
Yeah.
then,
Same.
and we don't have X either, because that's just
Yeah.
crap.
It's a shit
And
show.
then we also have otheringpodcast.com, which is our website where you can contact us to be a guest. You can listen to the show or contact us just to say hi, whatever you want to do. And thank
Well, I
you so much
strongly,
for having us.
Yes.
absolutely, I strongly encourage my listeners not to only subscribe, but if you think you've got something to contribute, to reach out to them and
Please.
schedule an interview, because my experience was very positive. I quite enjoyed it, and it's. I think you guys are doing good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It means a
Hmm.
lot to hear that. Keeps us going too, because we want to be able to give everybody that, I guess you could say, 15 minutes of fame type of feel. And everybody deserves that moment to shine. And
Hmm.
it's nice to meet people with so many different backgrounds, but yet so many things that connects us too. And if there's more people out there that want to join us, come on over. Talk to us. We would love to talk to you if you have something to promote as well as talking to us. We'll talk about that too.
Might get scheduled 2 months out, but yeah,
Yeah.
we're more than happy to put you on the calendar.
Awesome. Thanks you. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I am Scott Roche, and you're listening to my review of Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato. I love a good bad guy. I also love finding a new horror novelist. When I saw the premise for Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato, I was sold. Winifred Naughty is in the market to be a nanny for the Pounds family in a 19th century English hamlet. Told in first person, we get the idea right away that there's something not right about her. From comments about eating to children to her thoughts about past clients and her own dark past, it's clear that she's a very disturbed young woman. A very disturbed young woman who's planning a Christmas surprise for her new family. Faito clearly loves her unreliable narrator. There's a certain glee that shines through the prose, inviting us to root for the twisted governess and creating anticipation of what she has in store for the Pounds and their household. She does an excellent job with foreshadowing and keeps us on our toes in regards to what Fred experiences, wondering what's real and what's a product of her depraved mind. And depraved she is. She knows the road she's heading down and has no qualms or regrets about where it will lead her. Her only watchword is patience. She wants to make sure she's able to stay employed with the Pounds long enough to give them their Christmas present. What that is, and why she's chosen the Pounds as her targets, is slowly revealed. The payoff is 100% worth the wait, though you won't have to wait long. The book clocks in at about 200 pages, and you'll be finished with it before you know it. I'll warn you, this book is only for people who have a taste for the darkest of humor and no small amount of gore. They're in the process of producing a film version by A24, and I find myself wondering if they'll tone it down at all. If they don't, this will get the hardest of R ratings. I give this book an enthusiastic 5 stars, and I look forward to reading her previous book, Mrs. March.